Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back again with the daily dose of doom and gloom, providing you with my meager, humble prepper's meta-analysis of all of the crisis and calamity that has unfolded in the last 24 hours. Guys, there's one story in particular of many, as you can see by the interactive map behind me, that I want to dial in on, because you're probably not going to hear this information anywhere else unless you're amongst one of the most hardcore, super sleuthing, open source intelligence gathering data nerds out there. But I'm going to give you a brief overview of everything we're going to talk about. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into that. So let's just break it down. North Korea, nuclear test incoming. A live detonation of a nuclear weapon could take place on the Korean Peninsula within the next couple days, couple weeks. It could happen right now, could happen tomorrow, according to U.S. intelligence. Why would they do it now? Well, North Korea has basically made a red line in the sand, and they've said that if the South Koreans and the Americans go through with what will be one of the largest military exercises they've ever conducted, then they're going to make a statement. Is that statement going to come in the form of a nuclear test, just to put the Americans and South Koreans on notice that they're not messing around? It may well. And here is the concern that I have, guys, is that any major war that is going to transpire, it's going to happen around the same time as a military exercise, because that's where you have everything where you want it. And the North Koreans know that the South Koreans and the Americans are literally planning to not only engage in a nuclear war with North Korea, but how to invade the North Koreans. So they could very easily misinterpret. There's a lot of room for misinterpretation and error to happen here in the next couple weeks. So pay attention to the Korean Peninsula, because this is where hell could just totally break loose in the next couple weeks, okay? Even the North Koreans have come out today and said the chance of nuclear war has moved from the realm of the imaginary to the realistic. We have China opening war mobilization centers around the country. Over 100 of these war mobilization centers are opening up. We're going to talk about exactly what that is. This is something they've done in the past in the United States prior to wartime, and we're going to talk about what the implications are. We also have the Chinese unveiling a new app for civilians in various provinces which are proximate to the Taiwan Strait. This app is going to notify people not only when the bombs are inbound, but where they can go to take shelter. It's going to be using the Baidu system, which is basically China's form of GPS, which is actually, most people don't realize, more advanced than ours. And it's going to direct them to the nearest bunker, of which there are thousands in just the one province of concern alone. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. We have undersea cables being cut to Taiwan. This is 5th-gen warfare. This is attacks on critical infrastructure. The Taiwanese are saying that the Chinese did this intentionally and that this was a test. If you don't know, submarine cables span the planet. It's like this big neural network that connects all of the various nations around the world, and it actually fosters 95% of telecommunications, okay? Not much is done with satellites, not nearly as much as people think. So if we get into a World War III type situation, what will first happen before the EMPs go off and the nukes get dropped is we're going to see cyber attacks, and we're going to see cables getting cut. And this is why a lot of countries are starting to get concerned. And was this a dry run? The Chinese are saying, well, it was just our fishermen's boats, the anchors or the trawling or whatever it was, might have got caught up in something, but the Taiwanese aren't entirely buying that. They're not entirely convinced of that. We have a new Maidan coup, according to the Russians, in the making in Georgia. Ukraine and the Americans are applauding the fact that there are mobs outside of the Georgian parliament right now trying to recreate January 6th in another person's country. I guess it's okay when it happens in another person's country. Anyways, World War III front has just expanded to Georgia. We have Belarus mobilizing for war and coming out with a new military doctrine, and this is expedited and in response to the fact that Ukrainian saboteurs have been arrested in that country for their plotting the destruction of the very expensive Russian surveillance plane that was at a Belarusian airbase recently. We have Californians stocking up According to the government, you should stock up for 2 weeks, meaning if the government is saying 2 weeks, you should stock up for 2 months due to incoming unprecedented storms, never before seen stuff. And it's interesting that the place that is going to get hit is actually Big Sur. If you recall, I talked in a recent video about how Big Sur is the bug out location of Sam Altman. He's the CEO of ChatGPT. So Sam, if you're currently at your bug out location, you're going to have to do a review of the gear that you use to get through the next couple months. Big time hardcore prepper, has been a prepper for a long time. Most people don't realize that. The guy who's currently working on the AI that's probably someday going to be in charge of all of the nuclear weapons and stuff and may well kill us all is a hardcore prepper who has a bug out location in Big Sur. Anyways, nothing surprises me anymore. Bakhmut collapse is pretty much a done deal. At this point, everybody's talking about it. Biden's talking about it. Stoltenberg's talking about it. And NATO apparently is kind of, sort of, not really panicking. But the Zelensky regime has said that if the Bakhmut line collapses, then the Russians may have a straight run. Okay, this is where we might start to see things open up. But we just don't know. Are they playing 4D chess? Are they trying to bait the Russians in to some sort of trap? It's really hard to know at this point in time. But as myopic as people have been on both sides of this conflict, it probably is just what it looks like. The Russians broke through, and there's a good chance that now that they've broke through one of the primary, most fortified lines of the Ukrainians, that it's going to be much easier for them to go further if they can muster the manpower and the artillery shells. We have a massive mammal die-off from bird flu in South America, which is getting zero attention in the media. Just enough attention to kind of percolate and I think set the foundation for what's going to be coming. We're going to be seeing a major escalation in this bird flu situation in the next couple of years. I don't know if it's going to mean like a wipeout of various species that aren't birds, or if it's going to just jump right to humans right away, and that's going to be the big story. But Biden's already talking about vaccinating all the birds. So guys, if you know of any bird flu stocks, let me know in the comment section who's going to be, because that's probably going to be the only thing that's going to be doing well in the stock market in the coming years ahead is flu stocks and anything that's going to be fueling the whole dystopian thing. Sea lions. Thousands of sea lions are dying of bird flu. That is incredibly mysterious, guys, not getting any attention whatsoever. U.S. Special Operations are going to be using deepfakes, okay? Special Operations Command is going to be using deepfakes in order to subvert governments. I was going to say democratically elected, but maybe not democratically elected governments. But they're going to be using this for their operations. So you know what that means. That means that we're about to enter a world where you're not going to be able to know what is real and what is fake. There's going to come a point, probably in the next few years, where what I'm doing right now is going to be obsolete, or you're just not going to be able to, there's going to have to be some sort of litmus test to prove that I'm real. Because it's going to get so convincing, especially when you think of how hair-triggered a lot of people are, especially around certain sensitive things like religion. There's some people, if you insult the religion in the wrong way, you can literally cause a riot, and they can go and burn down like government buildings and stuff. Imagine how powerful this deepfake technology is going to be if they put it in the right places using the wrong hands. We have the United States planning on ramping up nuclear production, nuclear weapon production. That's according to John Bolton. It's not enough that they have enough nuclear weapons to keep parity with the Russians. We need enough nuclear weapons to make sure we have more than the Chinese and the Russians combined. The Chinese, of course, are growing their nuclear stockpiles tenfold. We have Nord Stream damage control in the works. Isn't that hilarious? It's like they just pulled out their alibi. It's like they just went through the Rolodex. Which alibi should we use? This Seymour Hersh guy, he's talking too much. We better come out with some kind of cover story. Yeah, we'll blame some, pro-Ukrainian people on a yacht. We'll say pro-Ukrainian because that doesn't imply that it was Ukrainians, and then Ukrainians will deny it. So it's basically just pro-Ukrainian. So it basically could be everyone. Could be the Russians. Yeah, it's the Russians. It's pro-Ukrainian Russians on one of Vladimir Putin's many yachts. Who did it? End of story. Case closed. We have gold and silver hoarding continuing with central banks. We have the Aussies. Was it the Perth Mint, who was accused of diluting their gold? 9 billion in gold had to be recalled. Now, a lot of people are misinterpreting this, thinking that the gold itself was, entirely fake. I think it was a matter of like percentage points. So it's supposed to be 9999 with 4 nines, but it was probably like 9999 or 999 or something like that. But that one little bit of dilution, when you're doing the volume that they do, that's a lot of money. And apparently they tried to cover it up. So the Chinese aren't too happy about it. And, people are going to be concerned. That's going to definitely tarnish your reputation in the global gold market. We have train derailments happening in Russia. They're chalking it up to sabotage, which makes me wonder, why aren't they chalking what's happening here up to sabotage? Because it'd be very easy for sleeper cells to infiltrate the United States. We live in a glass house after all. Wouldn't be very hard for Russians and Chinese and anybody who doesn't like us, any sort of extremist groups who want to create a ruckus, to just start derailing trains everywhere. It's 5th generation warfare, man. Asymmetrical tactics. Let's just dive into it. Now, I want to talk about this story here. 11 minutes in and the damn video ain't even started yet. I'm sorry, guys. I really do try to blitz through this stuff as fast as possible, but to get all my thoughts out, sometimes it takes time. And I also want to show you, I want to show you this. Remind me before we go. Oh, yeah, that's right. You're not here. I'll have to remind myself. I got to show you this infographic. This is incredible. It's very, very telling of what's going to happen. Now, anyways, defense mobilization offices, 104 of these across China, 92 in guess where? Fujian province. The province which happens to be right across the Taiwan Strait. Oh, why would that be? Why would the National Defense Mobilization Offices be set up there? What is a National Mobilization Office, you asked? Well, let me tell you. And this is from the China in Focus YouTube channel, by the way. This is not exclusive to me. I'm basically just parlaying the information. Now, according to them, this office is for the purpose of coordinating and mobilizing resources, of course, as it pertains to military matters, with respect to transport, economy, tech, data, and comms, arranging civilian measures against air attacks, coordinating manpower, and of course, acting as the basis for conscription. So when they finally do send out the call for war mobilization, just got to check my surveillance cameras here, make sure nobody's running up on me. Surveillance cameras, guys, they're worth it. This is going to be the basis for when they have to start doing the draft. And basically it allows them to take over any of these judiciaries and regions that these offices are in and coordinate their affairs. So this is big. Why are they doing this right now, and why is it concentrating across the Taiwan Strait? Because of course we know what's going to happen. I mean, they're cutting cables to Taiwan under the guise of it being fishermen. So we know that they're preparing. We know that they've done military exercise to simulate blockades around the island. So what they're going to do is they're going to basically encircle the island with naval vessels. And if the Americans try to break through, which I think would be suicide because, oh, there, I said the word, now the video is going to be, anyways. I think that's not going to go well. What is Douglas McGregor's quote? A ship's a fool to fight a fort, right? So, I mean, you only have so many resources on a ship. And when you have a $30 trillion, the Chinese, man, we couldn't beat the Afghanistanis or the Afghanis or whatever Afghan people are called nowadays. We couldn't beat them. We couldn't beat the Iraqis. We couldn't beat the Vietnamese. You think you're going to beat the Chinese? So what the Chinese are going to try to do is they're going to try to starve them out, because they know that the Taiwanese, they only have a certain amount of fuel on the island. They only have a certain amount of resources and food and all this stuff. But the Taiwanese are preparing for it, and of course there's concern that if they get Taiwan, then they're not too far from various Japanese islands, right? And the Chinese basically gave the United States a bit of an ultimatum, if you will, the other day. They basically said that if the United States keeps going in the direction that it's going, well, it's going to get where it's headed. And where it's headed is a war with the Chinese. So these mobilization offices are quite telling. We're not hearing anything about this in the media. And it's of great concern, obviously, because it signals that the Chinese are most definitely, absolutely preparing for war. Otherwise, they wouldn't have these concentrated in the province that is right across the street from Taiwan. Now, the same province where that was rolled out in, they have this civil air defense navigation platform. Okay, this app doesn't use GPS. It uses something called the Baidu positioning system. So it's not reliant on American GPS. The Baidu positioning system is similar to the global positioning system, only they actually have more satellites. So in theory, it's more accurate. Now, this province alone houses 1,000 bunkers. That might seem like a lot, but that's a pretty big province. I mean, that might not do it justice on the map. It's about 3 times the size of Taiwan by the looks of things. And what this app is going to do, when the shit hits the fan, it's going to start flashing and beeping, kind of like your emergency alerts on your phone do right now. It's going to start flashing the flashlight and all this stuff. But in addition to that, it's going to direct people to the closest bunker, the 5 closest bunkers to them when the shizzy hits the fizzy, when the bombs are inbound. Now, I gotta ask, China, have you really thought this through? Can you imagine the chaos in the streets when everybody gets that alert? Can you imagine the gridlock that's going to ensue, unless you're talking about bunkers within walking distance? Can you imagine the urban chaos that will ensue after that alert goes off? So I don't know if they've thought this through. They're probably going to have to run several tests to see if something like that is not going to do more harm than good. Like I said, there's 1,000 bunkers in that region. It seems like a lot, but it's not really that much. 5 closest bunkers with directions how to get there. And this is probably something that you're going to see, China is rolling it out in that one province. I'm pretty sure you're probably going to see something very similar to this that integrates that GPS position system or the Baidu position system in order to direct you to a safe place to go. Not here, though, of course, because our governments don't really care about our well-being. And the risk of nuclear war is very, very low, we're told. Just like the risk of inflation was very, very low. Just like, this whole thing, this COVID thing spreading ever in the first place was very, very, very low. So, don't worry. Nuclear war is never going to happen. Just sleep tight. Where should we go next? Let's go over to the Korea, seeing as we're here. So these are all the American military bases in South Korea. Okay, there is a lot of American troops in South Korea right now. If things popped off there, there's no way we ain't getting involved. There's no way the American people are not going to be suckered into this one. And what's interesting about this is that there's really hush-hush about it. Everybody's focused on Ukraine, China, Taiwan. Very few people talking about what's going on in North Korea right now, okay? Now, where do I start here? There's so much. Let's just talk about this. North Korea cites a realistic chance of nuclear war due to the irresponsible actions of the United States and South Korea, which are concentrating only on belligerent armed demonstrations thick with gunpowder, contrary to the international community's desire for tension relief and political instability. The risk of nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula is shifting from an imaginary stage to a realistic one. And we all know that if it actually went kinetic, there is very little chance. Now that the Americans have flown B-52s over and have threatened nuclear strikes on North Korea, not overtly, but covertly with other suggestions that they've made, that this thing would get hot and this thing would go nuclear. And I don't know how North Korea would survive a nuclear war with the Americans. And I don't know how the Chinese would be able to sit idly by and let it happen. But understand that this is exactly when you would see a war start. when there wasn't a whole lot of talk about it, just a little bit, and when they're doing one of the biggest military exercises that's simulating that very thing. Because you could never have a war start without everything being where it needs to be. The Americans and the South Koreans are going to be effectively as ready as they're going to be to fight a war with North Korea in the next 2 weeks, in that 2-week window. So if they're going to want to get it over with, which probably will mean, it's going to be over for many of us, because the North Koreans, they have the capability, and I would not be surprised if it did get to the nuclear level that they shot one of their ICBMs up over the continental United States and North America and took out some of our power grid. They easily could with the missile capabilities that they have, and they have dozens of these just on ICBMs alone, and who knows how much, because China and North Korea are so secretive. We really don't know what the true capabilities are. If there's any place where they probably don't have a whole lot of intelligence, it's probably in North Korea. Regardless, the Americans are saying that, the North Koreans are likely to do a nuclear test any day now. So it is what it is. So just a lot of rhetoric coming out of there, but not like mainstream rhetoric. You really have to do a little bit of digging to find this stuff. But things are definitely flaring up in the east. As you can see, China weighs emergency fast track for laws as as Taiwan tensions mount. So the groundwork is being laid for all this stuff. Okay, like the Taiwan censorship law that's coming into practice, where if you're accused of disseminating disinformation during wartime, you can be put in jail. So they're already setting the groundwork for what they know is probably coming. So we've covered the eastern stuff. Let us go. I don't know much about what's going on in Georgia right now. All I know is that they're storming the Parliament building there, and for all we know, that could be where the focus of the news cycle drifts in the next week. If not there, definitely Moldova, definitely whatever is beyond Bakhmut. And it appears that you have to wonder, if NATO is willing to let Bakhmut fall, with all of NATO's supposed power, with all of their military capability, and the United States can't keep saying, oh, we're running out of ammo. Don't believe that the United States are running out of ammo. I don't believe that for a minute. We're talking about multi-trillion dollars worth of who knows how much. Probably, really, when you probably put it all on paper, I was going to say 100 trillion in terms of net assets of the U.S. military, but there's a lot. They got a lot of stuff. And the fact that they can't even get a few tanks there is complete and utter nonsense. They're clearly worried about this thing escalating to the nuclear level. They're going to push Putin just enough to try to keep him at bay, but they're not going to push him too hard. We didn't really talk about this submarine cable thing. This is an interactive submarine cable map. So these are all of the submarine cables that are under the sea. And it tells you, the cable length, what it does, what the owner is, and all this stuff. So most of our communications is still done like this. And I think this is kind of cool. I was thinking about this. I had a Joe Rogan moment here. This is like the synapses of the global brain knitting us all together, And this is really where 95% of telecoms flow. So if we were to see a war, we would start to see not only pipelines get severed, but we would start to see the brains of the operation, the lines get cut. And it would be very hard to, there'd be plausible deniability there. So it wouldn't be, attacks on infrastructure in international waters like this, it'd be very hard to peg it on. Because, you could attack this stuff from so many different places. And it would probably be hard for them to determine exactly where the failure occurred. So, yeah, I would expect to see some disruptions in the internet, either in the hardware or in the cyber attack realm of things very, very soon. As you can see, there's a lot of these cables that extend out from Taiwan and just everywhere, man. It's crazy. This planet is wrapped in these things. So I wanted to show you guys this. And this is interesting to me because I often hear some people make the excuse that, yeah, the USD, you know, it's got a long run left as the global reserve currency. My thinking with this whole New World Order stuff, and, you know, I think that a bipolar world, a multipolar world is, you can only have that if you have a Cold War. You can't have a peaceful, coexisting, bipolar, multipolar world. In an ideal sort of way, sure, yeah, you probably can. But realistically, no, you can't. Just how you can't have two presidents ruling one country. You can't have two people leading one household. This is why divorce happens, because both are trying to be the leaders nowadays, right? And I'm not saying it has to be the man, but somebody's got to be the leader in that situation. They butt heads, and you know, you can't have two chiefs, right? Otherwise, things just don't work out. Anytime throughout history where you've had two or three powers that are equally weighted, war happens. That's what happened before World War I, happened before World War II, and it's about to happen now. Now, take a look at this. Starts in 1899. What was the global reserve currency? Well, it was Great Britain. Let's see what's going on here. So at the turn of the 19th century or 20th century, Great Britain starts to lose a bit. France, then some others, the Dutch come in. Then the USD in 1921. What the hell happened there? Okay, so after World War I, look at this. Everybody loses faith in the British pound. The USD comes in there out of nowhere, out of left field. Remember, 1915, nobody had US dollars. Okay, look at this. Boom! 1921. And this is where we had the roaring 20s, baby. You remember? When everybody was spending money they didn't have to invest in things that didn't exist. Here we go, 1920, 1930. Oh, starts to pull back. Great Britain, people are losing faith in the American Empire. Yeah, Great Britain comes back. They defeat the Germans. And wait a minute. Now after we invent the bomb, right? And now it's the Americans. Now it's really like whoever's in a war, it seems, is winning. Because watch this. We get the Korean War here, okay? We got a good war going. We got some good war. A little slip in the war. Oh, wait, we're going to get some more war here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, all the way up to the 70s. We got war. Okay, now that's when Rambo came out in the 78. People were starting to get mad. Then it starts to go back. Oh, wait, something's happening here. This is like the EU's currency, European Currency Unit. 1981, there's not enough war going on. There's no more war. Wait a minute. George Bush, 1990. Okay, here we go. We've got some war. We've got some Gulf War, Afghanistan, 9/11. Coming up to, what else do we got? Iraq going on here. And see, right now, this is where we are. It's starting to slip. So, what do we need? We need another war. And if you notice, the Americans are in competition with the Europeans here. That's the thing to remember, that there's something going on here with respect to not only the resource war and the energy war, but also the currency war, right? So yes, petrodollars still rule, but don't think that this thing can't just, you know, depending on the outcome. This just goes to show you, in 100 years, this thing changed hands tons of times. So reserve currencies change all the time. Even in the American history, there was a time here in 1988, you know, where it was like 50-50 with Americans and the rest of the world. And the reason why this is so important is because it allows Americans to grow their debt levels without any real immediate consequence. You can keep expanding the deficit. But every bubble's got to pop. That's for sure. What does Zelensky say? Warns of an open road through Ukraine's east if Russia captures Bakhmut as he resists the call to retreat. They're going to retreat, unfortunately. Now let's talk about this. Let's talk about this animal die-off. This is concerning to me. Check this out. At least 3,500 sea lions have been found dead due to the virus, according to the agency. Of over 3% of Peru's sea lion population. It has recorded live fur seal deaths linked to the bird flu. That is crazy. Explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru amid deadly flu outbreak. That's very concerning. 3% of their sea lions are dead from this. So we don't even know what the infection rate is, but clearly it's spreading between sea lions. But they haven't really made that public yet, unless sea lions just have a tendency to eat birds. I don't know. But there's a reason why. Maybe it's because the birds are crapping and the sea lions are just catching it that way and the sea lions are eating the crap. Who knows what goes on in the animal kingdom. But that's of concern because right now, I mean, I guess, you know, when are we going to get this variant? Because it goes from south, like the flu bounces from the southern hemisphere to the north. So eventually this is going to come back up to us. Eventually a sea lion is going to reinfect a bird who is going to take that sea lion bird flu strain up to here, and it's going to more easily infect mammals. And I don't know how the whole thing works, but guys, get ready for bird flu because it's coming. And even Biden has said, you know, we're going to have to vaccinate all the chickens. So you know what that means for all you backyard farmers out there. There's going to be more hurdles to overcome. I think Joel Salton and I were talking about this just the other day. And there's even some bird flu in our province here in Saskatchewan. 500,000 birds. Concerns researchers and farmers. I believe there are 20 billion chickens in the world. So I know it seems like a lot when you're hearing these numbers, millions, hundreds of thousands. There's a lot of chickens out there, so don't worry. But you know what? The chicken apocalypse could very well happen. That's how they'll usher in the new era of 15-minute cities and lab meat and all that good stuff, and the metaverse and filters and next-gen catfishing, where you guys see these TikTok filters nowadays. Imagine the distorted perceptions people are going to have with themselves with these TikTok glamour filters that make you look like you're a supermodel. I mean, this is about to end. This, and I'm talking about me disseminating this type of information, the real guy disseminating, this is about to end. We got a couple years at best. Anyways, enjoy it while it lasts. Big Sur officials advise residents to stock up on 2 weeks worth of essentials. That means stock up on 2 years worth of essentials if the government is saying that. That means stock up on 2 decades worth of essentials if the government is saying that. Some California residents are urged to prepare 2 weeks ahead of expected flooding. Isn't that crazy how the tables have turned? Like I said, guys, we're living in the age of extremes. It's either droughts or it's floods. You can't grow food in either of those situations. And then after the floodwaters recede a couple years from now, the whole place is going to burn down again. That's just, we're in the age of extremes. Check this out. U.S. nuclear bases to get security networking upgrade. From Persistent. Somebody sent me this email today. By the way, guys, if you have any information, feel free to send it my way. Thank you to the person who sent this to me. The U.S. Air Force tapped communications technology company Persistent Systems to provide seamless networking for security operations at the nation's 3 intercontinental ballistic missile bases. Well, what just happened there? Well, of course, we had the firing of 2 command officers and several other high-ranking officers at those facilities just weeks after the balloon flyovers and the suspension of the New START nuclear treaty, the flying of the Doomsday plane to Europe, and every other nuclear anomaly that has ensued since that point in time. Clearly, things are definitely heating up. Is it because somebody dropped the ball? Is it because the Americans realize how inept they are in a strategic sense compared to the Russians? Who knows? I don't. Maybe you do. Check this out. U.S. Special Forces want to use deepfakes for PSYOPs. It's funny, they just outright tell people this, right? And they're getting so accurate, so precise. I mean, it's to the point where they can almost make it look real in real time. So imagine what you could do with a supercomputer and all the time in the world to create a Hunger Games type scenario. The Hunger Games told us exactly what's going to happen. And you know what? The guy in Ukraine right now who's running the country, I get those Katniss Everdeen vibes from that guy all the time, like the Hunger Games vibe. Don't you guys get that? Like, it's not scripted, but it's clearly for the purpose. Go back and watch the Hunger Games. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about, man. Oh, if I only didn't have a brain. U.S. Special Operations Command, responsible for some of the country's most secret military endeavors, is gearing up to conduct internet propaganda and deception campaigns using deepfake videos. Well, unfortunately, what goes around comes around. So just remember this. Remember this when the tables turn on them and people start using it against them. They started it. Oh boy, check this out for all you silver stackers out there. Good news. If we make it to 2050, which we likely won't, solar energy production could require most of the global silver reserves. You know what that means? To the moon for silver. Central bank gold buying takes up where it left off in 2023. Now, according to some of the estimates, we're going to run out of gold by 2030, I believe. We've already passed peak gold, unless the Ugandans are correct and they're sitting on the largest gold reserves ever discovered. But some people are suspicious and in doubt about that. Anyways, this is from Peter Schiff's website. We'll try to get Peter back on the channel to see what his take is on stuff. If you haven't seen our interview we did with him, go check it out. We already talked about inflation. What else do we need to talk about here? Belarus Defense Ministry to draft a new military doctrine. The decree also draws attention to the current escalation of global geopolitical tensions. The Belarusians are really upset. And this is exactly, Lukashenko has to watch out, because it's exactly what the Ukrainians want, is to drag them into the war. Because if the Belarusians join the war, then NATO is going to be like, oh, now we have to do something. And that's exactly what Russia doesn't want. And that's when you get another Maidan revolution in Belarus, right? So, yeah. I mean, as you can probably ascertain from my synopsis of daily events, things aren't doing so well in the world, to put it lightly. Things aren't going so well, and you should probably keep on prepping for that reason. I mean, to put it simply, right? I mean, what more do I need to say? So, yeah, there's a guy who, billionaire, poor billionaires, can't get their money. Chinese are restricting capital flow. They're not letting them take money out of the banks. Suspicious. That's not a good look when you're trying to dethrone the USD as the global reserve currency. The Chinese are saying, oh, that's bullocks. We're just doing our, appropriate checks and balances and stuff and making sure that this guy isn't laundering money or whatever it is they think he's doing. But you never know. There could be some truth to that. Anyways, the Russians are setting the groundwork for martial law. They're training the high school students how to throw grenades and survive nuclear war. And meanwhile, we are doing nothing. So that is why you should probably prepare for the end of the world as we know it. Perth Mint sold billions in diluted gold to China, tried to cover it up. Yeah. Apparently what did they call it? It's something that's a accepted practice in the industry called gold doping. So you add very, very small amounts of copper and silver. Not enough that you're not getting, pretty much pure gold, but just a little bit. So this picture doesn't really do it justice. I'm going to show you guys something today, because this is before we go here, this is my favorite EDC item. And for those of you who've stuck around to the 40-minute mark, you get to see what is the best EDC flashlight that I've ever used. I'm going to do an in-depth breakdown video of it because I love it so much. I absolutely hated the tubular flashlights because they bulge out. And let's face it, ladies, I got enough bulge issues as is. Sorry, one bad joke for the day. But no, seriously, look at that flat form factor. Okay, look at that. Streamlight wedge. Can you guys see that? Oh yeah, I'm not in autofocus. Oh, I guess there's going to be some mystery around this. Streamlight wedge. And the great thing about this is it is perfectly made for my LA Police Gear pants. It does, you don't have to worry about it turning on in your pocket because the on switch is up. And when you put it in your pocket, you're pushing it down into your pocket. So it's always going to automatically turn off. Only has 2 levels. So it has a powerful and a very, very powerful. USB-C rechargeable. No buttons that can get automatically pushed. Just the perfect bare bones EDC flashlight, man. Best EDC flashlight I've ever used, guys, and I've used a lot. And it's lightweight. Okay, I cannot say enough good things about it. I've been looking for the ultimate flat-form flashlight for a long, long time. For a long, long time. I was looking for it on the same mountain that I found that shovel on. And it was one mountain over. But go check it out, CanadianPreparedness.com. Use coupon code PreppingGear for 10% off. I only have, I think, about, we probably have about 50 in stock or something like that. So get them while you can. But anyways, guys, that's about all I got to talk about today. I'm sure I could talk about a lot more, but you probably got better things to do. Well, you should, because you should be using your time wisely. And I hope when I'm doing these long form videos, you're not just sitting there staring at the screen, that you're doing something, that you're organizing some preps, that you're oiling the steel or doing something else that is productive. Try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone because time is of the essence, my friends. All right, guys, take care. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.